Yo, what's up YouTube? I'm the guy that hates Tuesdays, and today we're going to be reading the actual chapter 1 of my story, Nightwatch. If you haven't seen part 1, there will be a link to the prologue down in, well, this is part 1. Well, there'll be a link to the prologue down in the description, along with a few other things, but I'll get to that at the end. Before I get going, the way I've divided the story is that they are chapters, but the way it's... So this is Screams in the Dark 1, and it's like divided into like these different parts. Currently there's only technically 2. I'm about to get starting on the 3rd one. But you could... The videos are just going to be called part 1, part 2, part 3, as we get going. But this is Nightwatch Screams in the Dark 1. Terror had struck the town. At night, a thing emerged. Its horrid screeches fueling both nightmares of children and adults alike. And by daybreak, either a few cattle or a friend's shredded remains would be found by the edge of the woods. It first took sheep, then cows. Now it had grown confident, and seemingly no one was safe from its claws. Most horrible of all was the fact none had seen it, at least to live and tell of it. They arrived by horseback, black beasts of burden carrying them and their tools of the hunt to the scene. This sort of tale rarely went uninvestigated by the watch, and this one was no different. David could see it in the people as they led their horses into the stables they'd rented. The dull look of dread, the shifty movements, the nervous voices, all waiting for someone to come clawing at them from the woods. All of them finally dressed in the proper uniform seemed more promising to the common folk, a shimmer of hope in their eyes. The more professional exterior did as it was intended. You are all to rest for the day. As soon as the sun starts to set, we meet here, by the stables, and I shall discuss what information I've gathered with you. Till then, go, eat, sleep, whatever. I need you all at your best. I have a bad feeling about this one. David's words were strong and demanding as usual. With that, he went off. He had a few words to be had with the local leader. As Morton and Adaria looked to each other, Sarah had disappeared as well. God knows how she did it, but she always did. Well, that's got to be at least a few hours, she said. Martin seemed a tid anxious, his hand holding the leather strap of his crossbow rather tightly as he watched the people around them. Something's gotta be way wrong if they're acting like that, he mumbled. The blonde nodded. She could see it as well, the tension of the townspeople nearly so thick it could be smelled in the air. Come on, first drink's on me, lad, she then said, reassuringly, her gloved hand tapping him on the shoulder as she went for the inn. A sigh came to follow her before he did. As the sun set, the townsfolk clearly grew more frightened. They hurried to carry out their tasks and return home. Windows were shut, doors locked, lamps and candles lit. The streets swiftly emptied, and the hunters found themselves alone in the dimming light of day and night meeting. David watched as the sun hung low, his eye turning towards his companions, all of them present. I take you've all sensed the mood the town has carried into. He spoke calmly. The others nodded. It was clear as day. I've done some asking around, talking to a few specific people. I call it the Shrieker. All speak of horrible cries in the night, and nearly always death to be discovered by the wood's edge in the morning. 13 townsfolk have gone missing, all been found in the shape of carnage so far. 13 is no joke. This beast finds itself confident that will either be an issue or an advantage, he explained. They all have gotten used to this by now. I don't expect it slain tonight, so your tasks will be as follow. Simply patrol around the south and west edge of the village. I will be keeping my eye on the east. If you encounter the beast, you are to retreat immediately. Little information is available. but what I have speaks of it being very dangerous. All I know is it has a dislike to light, so you are all to carry a lamp on you person at all times, though by all means, if more than one of you encounter the beast at once, do try its strength, but take no risks, we know too little. A sigh came from her, a finger idly toying with the hilt of her sword. It'd been doing so for at least an hour now, her eyes calmly watching the edges of the light surrounding her. It was almost time for her next trip around the barn and back. With a sigh, she grabbed the lamp and began walking, the low crunches of her boots hitting the dirt and gravel echoing past her. It seemed deafening in the silence of night. "Shriek my ass," she grumbled. The road was dark, not even a single lamp post. The surrounding blackness made her bubble of light seem vulnerable, lonely. But as she neared the farm, she could see the slightly distant light of Martin's lamp slowly walking along his patrol route, and even further away Sarah's. That did encourage her a bit, as she reached the old empty barn. Then, for a moment, she felt something. She spun around, lamp raised high, eyes watching the road's edge towards the forest. Blackness and the tall shadows of trees was all that met her gaze. The lamp lowered once more. Had there been something? Nah, she sighed, turning back around to finish the trip around the barn, the old paint on the walls almost scraped off by time. Then, as she got to the other side of the barn, there it was again, the feeling, an itch in her mind, eyes watching the shadows as they moved out of the way of light. Nothing. Her fingers grasped the handle of her sword now, tighter than she might have meant to. "Just a little further," she mumbled reassuringly. The dark was getting to her was all she thought. Her feet froze in place as she made it around to the front again, a faint trail of red liquid leading into the dark ahead. Trails of individual but large drops. Blood. She felt the wind pass by. It was getting colder by the night. Winter on the horizon. At least behind the fading corpse of summer, that is fall. Her father had taught her that. She balanced the dagger between her fingers, her arm moving back and forth, wrist twisting, but her fingers kept their grasp, and her arm moved slowly. Just some simple aim practice. She was patient, she knew she was, but the town made her uneasy. With a sigh, she got up, stretched her legs for a moment, and grabbed her lamp. She might as well go for the patrol for a moment or two early. She could do it slowly, she thought. The dagger still in hand, now held firmly within her palm, she began to walk. She had a small road leading out of town and the area around it to watch over. The vast emptiness of countryside by night only filled slightly by the tall shades of trees by the edge of her light. It made her feel like a target. It was better to be in the dark, but she took David's words seriously, and the name Shrieker had made her shudder a bit. It wasn't a favorite word of hers. But then again, what word was? Silence is key. Do not let them read you. Her father's words echoed in her mind. It seemed easier that way, her footsteps silent in the grass and dirt below. She heard a crack, a twig. Her eyes turned, her head knowing better than to give a reaction away. Nothing but darkness and trees. Without noticing, she'd picked up the pace, her legs going in front one another at ever-increasing speeds. Just up the road, she mumbled, reaching the old, rotting sign. Guru, it read, and back around, she finished. As she turned, in the distance, she saw another light, then another, further away. Her feet now calm on the ground as she walked back. Perhaps this rumor was simply that. Rumors and misunderstandings. Then she heard it, a weapon being drawn. The clear sound of sharpened steel being unsheathed cut through the night's silence, a sound her ears knew all too well to miss. Shit. Guarding and patrolling, it'd been his life for most of the adult part. Hell, even a bit of his childhood had been wasted on that damned wall back in Triac. But it taught him to load bolts properly, and aim even better. He now held the crossbow in one hand, resting it against his shoulders. Eyes watching the darkness, he yawned. Should have napped. A sigh, the memory, a scream, the scent of burning flesh, the rumble of crumbling walls, the panic, chaos. He snapped out of it. No, can't go back to that again. Not now. Gotta keep moving. He began walking. His route, like the others, went along the wood's edge. In the distance he saw a light. He knew behind him somewhere another would be burning. His lamp attached to a ring on his belt. Good thing he'd kept that, along with the crossbow. He walked calmly through the dark, a beacon of light by his hip. Up ahead, he could see a small mill and a fence. It reminded him of his childhood home, before his mother and he had moved to Triac. When will father come home? He remembered saying, caught in memory. He didn't watch the road below, and his foot hit something, the certainty of it causing him to stumble forward and nearly fall. What in the... He began as he turned to look at what had caught his step short. A leg. Human, to be exact. His eyes widened as his hand lowered the crossbow, the other catching the large thing, ready to fire. He spun around himself, slowly. Nothing. Nothing. And then, finally, blood. A faint trail, leading away from the road and into the woods. Blast. The thick trunks of ancient trees met his light as he approached the edge. He stopped, thinking for a moment. No, I should get someone, he thought, head spinning to see whose light was the closest, surprised as he only saw one light now, and the side reigned by darkness to its fullest. A loud, animalistic screech burned through the silence of night, a nightmarish cry of death. In their homes, the village folk, not yet asleep, would shudder, knowing what the morning would bear. Outside, David was running towards the west. Damn, he spat as he ran, his body's age always reminding him of its presence during times like these. But he wouldn't stop for that. He rounded the corner and now saw Sarah staring south. Sarah, move on. We've got an encounter to sort out, he said, grabbing her by the arm and ran as he ran past, her swift feet mimicking his pace instantly. Look, there's only one light, she said, a finger pointing. David's eye widened. Soon they'd be by Martin's route. Martin was on his way back when he saw their lights approaching him. I think Adar is in trouble, he said as they moved past and he joined. Think, act, time for thinking's over. Swear I'm not going to be the one doing the paperwork if she dies in your first actual investigation. David growled at the thought. Ahead, another of the disgusting cries had filled the air. Her lamp hit the ground once her eyes had spotted the thing, and then it was gone. Darkness. Shite, she said, drawing her sword, but silence met her as she got into a lowered stance, her eyes still dulled by the presence of unnatural light. Lost, she spat, blind. Then she felt something drip upon her arm. Warm. She spun around. A shadow stood out from the rest. It'd been right by her. Then it cried. A horrible sound, a frightening combination of pig, child, shattering glass, and something resembling metal grinding each other. If one would have to describe it. Her instincts kicked in. She couldn't see her foe, thus she couldn't fight it. Her left leg kicked the ground as she leapt backwards and spun around herself. The thing let out a second, shorter cry as she heard scratches in the gravel. It had already set in pursuit, her body flying down the road, but no matter how fast she ran, its next cry always fell right upon her. Her eyes hit the light ahead, more than one lamp. She was saved, she thought, at least. Out of the dark, Daria came flying, boots scratching the gravel as she spun around, sword in hand. It's upon me, she yelled. David stepped up, blade drawn. Formation, people! They could still hear its cries out there in the dark. Sarah put a hand within her coat, presenting a small round device of some sort, no larger than a simple bowl. She pressed something in on one side, and then began shaking it vigorously. "Good thinking," Martin added, recognizing the device, a glow orb. She tossed it, hard, into the road where Daria had come from, and with that, light burst from the device, as if a second moon had just been born from the dirt. Light filled the area around them, soft, bluish glow, but still light, their backs against one another's, eyes watching their surroundings. "Woods!" Martin yelled, all of them turning, weapons at the ready. A large shadow leapt between the trees, a yellow, bloated eye meeting them for a moment. Then a screech came, and silence met them once more. "Do we pursue?" Sarah asked. David shook his head. "We're not geared for that. That would be setting ourselves up for a perfect ambush." They now turned towards Daria. She had seen it, in the light of her lamp. The arm that held her sword seemed to shake a bit. Whatever it wasn't pretty. "You alright?" Martin asked. "Speak, hunter." David came second, and as per usual, nothing from Sarah. It's an ugly bastard. I say that much for sure," she mumbled, sheathing her sword, and then a thud came from the woods behind them. They all spun around. The upper body of the innkeeper laid there, having fallen from a tree. "That explains the leg," Martin thought, as David walked over to the remains. "Damn, this thing's a real beast," he mumbled as he crouched down beside the torso. Half an arm was attached to the shoulder, and the entire backside of the head was bitten off. Judging by the marks of the thing's teeth were serrated, and the amount of the marks suggested it had one hell of a maw. His eye caught by something that reflected the light. Black. It sat within the remaining shoulder. He drew a knife and nudged it out, a long, slim claw with a slight curve. "Yeah, a real beast," David mumbled as they stared at the claw in silence. And that was the end of Chapter 1 of Screams in the Dark, or well, Chapter 1 of Nightwatch. I've been the guy that hates Tuesdays, and if you like that, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, that stuff. I think I'm supposed to say that. I'll go with the meme. Also, if you look down in the description, first of all, there's a Discord server. If you have a voice, or a knack for voice acting, or an interest, or just want to try it out, or just want to be a part of a project or something, or like one of the characters, hit me up on Discord. There's a link to a server down there where you can find me. Then we'll figure that out if you're interested in that. There's also a Twitch channel where I stream pretty often. Sometimes I stream writing this. The story itself will of course be down there, the music I used. And finally, I have a podcast channel. It's not too good, but we have fun, and that's really all that matters. I think that's all I have to say. Bye.